He thought she was just lonely, but this widow was hiding a shocking truth. Sheriff Michael Hayes was a man interwoven with the very fabric of Cedar Creek. This wasn't just the town he policed. It was his lifeblood. Nestled amidst rolling hills that shimmered emerald green in the summer sun and wore a pristine blanket of white in the winter, Cedar Creek was a town where time seemed to move at a slower pace, where the rhythms of life were dictated by the changing seasons and the gentle flow of the creek that meandered through its heart. Sheriff Hayes, a man with a weathered face and kind eyes that held the wisdom of years spent observing the human condition, was as much a part of the town's landscape as the ancient oak trees that lined Main Street or the weathered church steeple that pointed towards the heavens. He knew every nook and cranny of the town, every hidden path in the woods, every bend in the river. He knew the creak of the old swing set in the park, a sound that evoked memories of childhood laughter and carefree days. He knew the exact time Mrs. Henderson, a woman with a heart as warm as her freshly baked apple pies, walked her poodle, their daily stroll a comforting ritual in the rhythm of the town. He knew the way the light hit the river at dusk, painting the water with hues of gold and crimson, a spectacle that never failed to fill him with a sense of awe and gratitude for the beauty that surrounded him. He knew the townsfolk, their names, their faces, their stories, their joys and sorrows woven into the fabric of his own life, their lives intertwined like the threads of a tapestry that depicted the rich and complex history of Cedar Creek. Sheriff Hayes was a man of observation, his years of service honing his ability to notice the subtle shifts in his environment, the nuances of human behavior, the unspoken language of the heart. He could read the worry lines etched on a farmer's brow, the telltale signs of a late frost threatening his crops. He could decipher the flicker of fear in a child's eyes, the silent plea for help masked by a brave facade. He could hear the unspoken plea for help in a trembling voice, the subtle tremor that betrayed a hidden burden. He was a man of empathy, his heart carrying the weight of the town's joys and sorrows, his compassion a beacon of hope in times of trouble. He'd seen his share of hardship, the inevitable trials and tribulations that visited even the most idyllic of communities. He'd mediated domestic disputes, his calm demeanor and patient listening defusing tensions and fostering understanding. He'd calmed agitated teenagers, his words of wisdom and guidance offering solace and direction. He'd apprehended the occasional petty thief, his firm but fair approach upholding the law while also recognizing the human fallibility behind every transgression. He was a pillar of the community, his presence a reassuring force in the face of conflict and uncertainty. His badge, a symbol of protection and justice, was worn with humility and a deep sense of responsibility. His calm demeanor, his steady gaze, his gentle voice, all conveyed a sense of trustworthiness and compassion, making him a confidant, a counselor, and a friend to the people he served. But lately, something had disrupted the familiar rhythm of his days, a subtle dissonance that tugged at his attention, a mystery that whispered in the shadows of the town's tranquility. It was a woman, always dressed in a faded blue coat, its worn fabric a testament to its age and the stories it held, who sat on the same park bench every night, her silhouette a lonely sentinel against the setting sun, her presence a silent enigma that piqued his curiosity and stirred a sense of concern within him. He'd seen her arrive just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, painting the familiar landscape in hues of twilight. Her movements were slow and deliberate, her footsteps measured and hesitant, as if each step carried the weight of some unseen burden. Her gaze was fixed on the ground, her eyes downcast, her face etched with a sadness that seemed to emanate from her very core. She'd sit on the bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her body radiating an aura of sadness and resignation, her silence a heavy cloak that enveloped her, isolating her from the world around her. She'd stay there for hours, unmoving, her silhouette merging with the deepening shadows, her presence a silent testament to some unspoken sorrow, some hidden burden that weighed heavily on her soul. She'd remain there until the darkness enveloped her completely, her form fading into the night, her story a mystery that haunted Sheriff Hayes's thoughts, a puzzle he felt compelled to solve, not just as a law enforcement officer but as a compassionate human being. Sheriff Hayes, his instincts honed by years of service, his intuition sharpened by his deep connection to the community, sensed a story behind her nightly vigil, a story of pain, loss, or perhaps a secret burden too heavy to bear alone. He felt a responsibility to understand, to offer help, to extend a hand of compassion to this woman who seemed lost in her own world of sorrow. He was a man of action, a man who believed in taking initiative, in reaching out to those in need, in offering a helping hand and a listening ear. He couldn't ignore the woman's silent plea for help, her nightly presence a constant reminder of the unspoken suffering that often lurked beneath the surface of the town's peaceful facade. He was also a man of respect, a man who understood the importance of privacy and personal space. He didn't want to intrude, to pry into the woman's life uninvited. But he also knew that sometimes the most compassionate act was to reach out, to offer a connection, to let someone know that they were not alone in their struggles. One particularly chilly evening, as the wind whipped through the trees, stripping the last leaves from their branches, their brittle forms dancing in the twilight like forgotten memories, and the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, their delicate dance a harbinger of the approaching season, Sheriff Hayes decided to approach the woman. He'd been observing her for weeks, his concern growing with each passing night, his curiosity piqued by her unwavering routine and her palpable sadness. He felt a sense of urgency, a need to break through the wall of isolation that surrounded her, to offer a connection, a lifeline in the sea of sorrow that seemed to engulf her. He knew that winter could be a particularly difficult time for those struggling with grief and loneliness, the cold and darkness amplifying the feelings of isolation and despair. He had seen it before, the way the holidays could bring up painful memories, the way the shorter days could cast a pall over the spirit, the way the cold could seep into the bones and chill the very soul. He approached the bench slowly, his footsteps muffled by the freshly fallen snow, its pristine blanket softening the harsh edges of the world, his presence a gentle intrusion into her solitary world. He didn't want to startle her, to disrupt her quiet contemplation, but he also wanted to convey his presence, his availability, his willingness to listen and offer support. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his voice soft and reassuring, his tone conveying a mixture of respect and concern. "Mind if I join you?" The woman, startled by his presence, her head snapping up from its usual downward gaze, looked at him with surprise and a hint of apprehension. Her eyes, though filled with sadness, held a spark of intelligence and a flicker of vulnerability, a hint of a soul yearning for connection, a soul that had been touched by loss and longing. I don't mind," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, her words hesitant and uncertain, as if she were unaccustomed to human interaction, her voice rusty from disuse. Sheriff Hayes sat down beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, his posture relaxed but attentive. He introduced himself, his voice warm and friendly, his badge glinting in the dim light of the street lamp, a symbol of his authority but also of his role as a protector and a servant of the community. "I'm Sheriff Hayes," he said. "I've noticed you here a few times. Just wanted to make sure you're all right." The woman, her gaze fixed on the falling snow, its delicate dance a mesmerizing distraction from her inner turmoil, remained silent for a moment, her body radiating a palpable sadness, her silence a heavy cloak that enveloped her, a barrier between her and the world. "I'm fine," she finally replied, her voice barely audible, her words unconvincing, a rote response that belied the depth of her emotions, the turmoil that raged within her. Sheriff Hayes, his instincts telling him otherwise, his years of experience reading the unspoken language of human behavior, gently probed further. "You seem troubled," he said, his voice gentle and empathetic, his words a gentle invitation to open up, to share her burden, to let him in. "Is there anything I can do to help?" The woman hesitated, her eyes welling up with tears, her body trembling slightly, her carefully constructed facade of composure cracking under the weight of his compassion, his genuine concern breaking through the wall of isolation she had built around herself. "No," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion, her denial a defense mechanism against the vulnerability of sharing her pain, the fear of exposing her raw emotions to a stranger. even a stranger with kind eyes and a reassuring presence. There's nothing anyone can do. Sheriff Hayes, his heart aching for her unspoken pain, his empathy reaching out to her like a lifeline, persisted, his voice a beacon of hope in the darkness that surrounded her. "You never know," he said, his tone gentle but firm, his words carrying the weight of his experience and his genuine desire to help. "Sometimes, about things can help. I'm a good listener." He paused, giving her space to consider his offer, his silence a comforting presence, a non-judgmental space where she could gather her thoughts and emotions. He watched the snowflakes fall, their delicate dance a metaphor for the fragility of life, the fleeting beauty of moments that could be snatched away in an instant. The woman, her defenses crumbling under the weight of his compassion. His genuine concern breaking through the wall of isolation she had built around herself, finally relented. She took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly, her body language shifting from guardedness to a tentative openness. Her voice, trembling at first, gradually gained strength as she began to share her story, a story of loss, grief, and a desperate search for solace. She spoke of her husband, his untimely death, the void his absence had left in her life, the pain that gnawed at her soul, a constant reminder of the love she had lost. The woman, her name was Emily, her voice soft but steady now, the dam of her emotions broken, revealed that she was a widow, her husband, a soldier named David, killed in action a year ago. She had been struggling to cope with his loss, the pain of his absence a constant ache in her heart, a shadow that followed her every step, a weight that pressed down on her soul. She spoke of their love story, their whirlwind romance that had swept them off their feet, their shared dreams of a future together, their plans to build a home, to start a family, to grow old together, their hopes and aspirations intertwined like the branches of a sturdy oak tree. She described their wedding day, the joy and laughter that had filled the air, the promises they had made to each other, promises that had been cruelly cut short by the tragedy of war, the echoes of their vows now a haunting reminder of the life they had planned but never had. She spoke of her husband's dedication to his country, his unwavering belief in the cause he was fighting for, his selfless sacrifice that had left her heartbroken and alone. She described his kindness, his gentle spirit, his infectious laughter, the qualities that had drawn her to him, the qualities that she missed with every fiber of her being, the qualities that lived on in her memories, a bittersweet reminder of the love they had shared. She explained that the bench held a special significance for her, a connection to her late husband, a tangible link to the memories they had shared, a place where she could feel his presence, where she could relive their moments of joy and connection. It was the place where they had first met, a chance encounter that had blossomed into a love that had defined her life, a love that had been cruelly snatched away from her, leaving a void that could never be filled. Every night, she would come to the bench, seeking solace in the memories of their shared moments, finding comfort in the familiar surroundings, her presence a silent tribute to the love they had shared, a way to keep his memory alive, a way to feel close to him despite the vast emptiness that his absence had created. She would sit on the bench, her mind replaying their conversations, their laughter, their shared dreams, the echoes of their voices a comforting presence in the quiet of the night. She would imagine him sitting beside her, his hand reaching for hers, his touch a phantom sensation that sent shivers down her spine, his eyes filled with love and tenderness, a gaze that warmed her heart and brought tears to her eyes. She would feel his presence in the rustling leaves, the whispering wind carrying his name, the chirping crickets serenading her with their nightly symphony, the gentle breeze that caressed her face like a lover's touch. The bench had become her sanctuary, a place where she could grieve, remember, and connect with the love that had defined her life, a love that transcended the boundaries of life and death. Sheriff Hayes listened intently, his heart aching for Emily's pain, his own experiences of loss and grief resonating with her story. He had lost his father at a young age, the suddenness of his death leaving a void in his life that had never truly healed, a scar that ached with every passing Father's Day, every birthday, every milestone that his father had missed. He understood the depth of Emily's sorrow, the weight of her grief, the desperate search for solace in the face of unimaginable loss. He understood the need to hold onto memories, to find comfort in familiar places, to seek connection with the departed in the quiet solitude of the night. He realized that Emily's nightly vigil was not just a manifestation of her grief, but also a testament to her love for her husband, a way to keep his memory alive, a way to honor the sacrifice he had made. He saw in her a depth of love, a loyalty, and a devotion that transcended the boundaries of life and death, a love that refused to be extinguished by the cruel hand of fate. He saw in her a strength and resilience that inspired him, a determination to find meaning and purpose in the face of adversity. He admired her ability to find beauty in the everyday, her appreciation for the simple things in life, her unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity, even in the face of unimaginable loss. He felt a deep respect for her, a connection forged in the shared understanding of loss and grief, a kinship that transcended their different roles in the community. He saw in her not just a grieving widow, but a woman of strength, courage, and unwavering love, a woman who deserved his support and compassion. He also realized that Emily's nightly visits to the bench were not just a personal ritual, but also a public display of her grief, a silent plea for understanding and support. He understood that her isolation, her withdrawal from the community, was a symptom of her pain, a defense mechanism against the overwhelming emotions that threatened to consume her. He saw in her a need for connection, a yearning for human touch, a desire to share her burden with others who could understand her pain. He felt a responsibility to reach out to her, to offer her the support and compassion she needed, to help her find her way back to the community, to the light of human connection, to the warmth of shared experiences. Sheriff Hayes, moved by Emily's story and her quiet strength, made a decision that would challenge the boundaries of his role as a law enforcement officer. He decided to become more than just a listener, more than just a sympathetic ear. He decided to become a friend, a support system, a beacon of hope in Emily's world of darkness, a guiding light to lead her out of the shadows of grief and back into the warmth of human connection. He began by visiting Emily at the bench more often, his presence a comforting constant in her nightly ritual. He would sit beside her, their shoulders brushing in the cool night air, their silence a shared space of understanding and acceptance. He would listen patiently, his silence a comforting presence, his occasional questions gentle prompts that encouraged her to delve deeper into her emotions, to explore the complexities of her grief, to find her own voice amidst the silence that had enveloped her. Their conversations gradually shifted from her grief to her hopes and dreams, her memories of her husband to her aspirations for the future. He encouraged her to talk about her feelings, to express her pain, to find healthy ways to cope with her loss. He listened without judgment, his empathy a balm to her wounded soul, his presence a source of comfort and strength. He also encouraged her to connect with others, to join support groups, to find solace in the shared experiences of those who had also lost loved ones. He introduced her to the community, inviting her to town events, creating opportunities for her to interact with others and rebuild her life, to rediscover the joy of human connection and the warmth of belonging. He invited her to the annual town picnic, a celebration of community spirit and togetherness, where families gathered under the shade of ancient oak trees, their laughter echoing through the park, their shared meals a symbol of unity and shared joy. He introduced her to the local book club, a group of women who shared her love of literature and offered a space for intellectual stimulation and companionship, their discussions a welcome distraction from the weight of her grief. He encouraged her to volunteer at the local library, a place where she could connect with others and share her love of books, a place where she could rediscover the joy of learning and the satisfaction of contributing to her community. He saw in her a love of literature, a thirst for knowledge, a passion for sharing stories that could transport people to other worlds and offer solace and inspiration. He became a constant presence in her life, a source of support and encouragement, a friend who listened without judgment and offered a shoulder to cry on. He helped her with errands, running to the grocery store for her, picking up her prescriptions, and assisting with household chores, his actions a testament to his care and concern for her well-being. He checked in on her regularly, his visits a welcome interruption to her solitude, his presence a reminder that she was not alone in her grief, that there were others who cared, who wanted to help her heal and rebuild her life. The consequences of his decision to extend his hand to Emily, to offer her friendship and support, were both personal and professional, rippling through his life like the concentric circles created by a stone dropped into a still pond. He found himself dedicating more time and energy to Emily, his concern for her well-being blurring the lines between his professional duties and his personal life. He spent his lunch breaks checking in on her, bringing her a sandwich from the local deli or a cup of coffee from the diner, their conversations a welcome respite from the demands of his job. He spent his evenings sharing conversations on the park bench, the setting sun casting long shadows as they talked about their lives, their losses, their hopes and dreams. He spent his weekends accompanying her to community events, his presence a source of support and encouragement as she tentatively re-engaged with the world around her. Some of his colleagues questioned his involvement, his dedication to a single individual exceeding the usual expectations of his role as a law enforcement officer. They worried that he was becoming too emotionally invested, that his objectivity was compromised, that his actions could be perceived as favoritism or even impropriety. They cautioned him to maintain a professional distance, to avoid blurring the lines between his personal and professional life. But Sheriff Hayes, his conscience clear, his heart guided by compassion, remained steadfast in his commitment to helping Emily. He believed that his role as a sheriff extended beyond enforcing the law, that it also encompassed serving and protecting the community, including those who were struggling and vulnerable. He saw in Emily a member of his community in need, and he felt a responsibility to help her heal and rebuild her life. He also faced challenges in his personal life. His wife, Sarah, a kind and understanding woman who had always supported his dedication to his community, expressed concerns about the time and emotional energy he was investing in his relationship with Emily. She worried that he was neglecting their own relationship, that his focus on Emily's grief was overshadowing their own needs and shared experiences. She missed their quiet evenings together, their leisurely weekend hikes, the spontaneous conversations that had once filled their home with laughter and warmth. She felt a distance growing between them, a sense of loneliness creeping into their marriage, a fear that she was losing her husband to another woman, even a woman who was grieving and in need of support. But Sheriff Hayes, through open communication and a renewed commitment to their marriage, reassured his wife of his love and dedication. He explained his need to help Emily, his empathy for her pain, and his belief that his actions were making a positive difference in her life. He acknowledged his wife's concerns, her feelings of neglect, and his own need to be more present in their relationship. He made a conscious effort to carve out more time for his wife, to prioritize their relationship, to rekindle the spark that had brought them together. He planned date nights, surprising her with candlelit dinners and romantic getaways. He brought her flowers, their fragrant blooms a symbol of his love and appreciation. He made sure she knew that she was still the most important person in his life, that his love for her was unwavering, that his commitment to their marriage was stronger than ever. He also involved his wife in his efforts to help Emily, inviting her to join them for outings, encouraging her to connect with Emily on a personal level, and sharing with her the progress Emily was making. He wanted his wife to understand his compassion for Emily, to see the positive impact he was having on her life, and to feel included in his efforts to help her heal and rebuild. Through open communication, mutual understanding, and a shared commitment to their marriage, Sheriff Hayes and his wife navigated the challenges. Their bond strengthened by their ability to face adversity together, their love deepened by their shared compassion for others. They found a new balance in their relationship, a deeper understanding of each other's needs and emotions, and a renewed appreciation for the love and support they provided each other. While Sheriff Hayes was navigating the complexities of his relationship with Emily and the challenges of his role as a law enforcement officer, a series of unsettling events began to unfold in Cedar Creek, casting a shadow over the town's tranquility and disrupting the familiar rhythm of life that had always defined the small community. A string of burglaries, targeting elderly residents, shook the town's sense of security and peace. The burglaries, characterized by their brazenness and the lack of forced entry, suggested a familiarity with the victim's routines and vulnerabilities. The perpetrator, it seemed, knew the town and its residents, exploiting their trust and their sense of security, their familiarity with the community making them invisible, their knowledge of the town's routines a weapon against its most vulnerable members. The first burglary occurred at the home of Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who always walked her poodle at precisely 3 p.m. every afternoon, her routine as predictable as the changing seasons. The burglar had entered her home while she was out on her walk, taking advantage of her predictable routine and her unlocked back door, a testament to her trust in the safety and security of her community. They had stolen her jewelry, her family heirlooms passed down through generations, each piece carrying a story, a memory, a connection to her past. They had also taken a small amount of cash she kept in a drawer, a meager sum that represented her life savings. The next burglary occurred at the home of Mr. Johnson, a retired teacher who lived alone, his quiet routine a comforting constant in the neighborhood. The burglar had entered his home through an unlocked window, taking advantage of his habit of leaving the window open for fresh air, his trust in the safety of his community leaving him vulnerable to those who would exploit his kindness. They had stolen his laptop, his connection to the digital world, his window to the outside world. They had also taken his collection of antique coins, a hobby he had cultivated over the years, each coin a piece of history, a tangible link to the past. And they had taken a sentimental pocket watch that had belonged to his grandfather, a family heirloom that carried the weight of memories and emotions, a symbol of his family's history. The burglaries continued, each one targeting a different elderly resident, each one exploiting their vulnerabilities and their trust in the community. The victims, their homes violated, their sense of security shattered, their precious belongings stolen, were left feeling vulnerable and betrayed, their trust in their neighbors and their community shaken to its core. The townsfolk, accustomed to the peace and tranquility of Cedar Creek, where doors were left unlocked and neighbors looked out for each other, now found themselves looking over their shoulders, their trust in their neighbors and their surroundings shaken. The once familiar streets now seemed filled with shadows, the once comforting silence now punctuated by the echoes of their fears. Sheriff Hayes, his instincts piqued, his sense of duty heightened, launched a thorough investigation, determined to apprehend the culprit and restore the town's peace of mind. He interviewed the victims, his empathy and compassion offering them comfort and reassurance, his presence a beacon of hope in their time of distress. He analyzed the crime scenes, his trained eyes searching for clues, fingerprints, or any trace of the perpetrator's identity. He dusted for fingerprints, collected DNA samples, and photographed every detail, his meticulous approach a testament to his dedication to justice and his commitment to protecting his community. He sought to identify any patterns or connections that could lead him to the perpetrator, his mind piecing together the puzzle, his intuition guiding him through the maze of possibilities. He increased patrols, his presence a visible reminder of law and order, his watchful eyes scanning the streets, his reassuring presence offering a sense of security to the anxious residents. He organized community meetings, bringing the townsfolk together to share information, express their concerns, and offer support to one another. He addressed their fears, acknowledging their vulnerability, but also emphasizing the strength and resilience of their community. He encouraged them to look out for each other, to report any suspicious activity, and to strengthen their community bonds, their unity a powerful weapon against those who sought to exploit their trust. He emphasized the importance of unity and resilience in the face of adversity, reminding them that they were not alone in this challenge, that together, they could overcome this obstacle and restore the peace and security that had always defined their town. The burglaries, while creating a sense of fear and uncertainty, also served to unite the community, their shared vulnerability fostering a renewed sense of solidarity and a determination to overcome the challenge together. Neighbors checked in on each other, offering support and assistance. Community watch groups were formed, their vigilant eyes patrolling the streets, their presence a deterrent to those who would prey on the vulnerable. The town, once complacent in its tranquility, now awakened to the reality that even in the most idyllic of communities, darkness could lurk, and vigilance was necessary to protect the vulnerable and preserve the peace. He analyzed every piece of evidence, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed, his trained eyes searching for patterns, for connections, for any clue that could lead him to the perpetrator. He dusted for fingerprints, carefully lifting each delicate print from surfaces, hoping to find a match in the national database. He collected DNA samples, meticulously preserving each hair, fiber, and bodily fluid, hoping that the microscopic evidence would reveal the identity of the culprit. He photographed every detail of the crime scenes, capturing the slightest disturbance, the smallest trace of the perpetrator's presence. He felt the pressure mounting, the community's anxiety growing with each passing day, their trust in his ability to solve the case hanging in the balance. He knew that he had to find the culprit, not just to bring them to justice, but also to restore the town's sense of security and peace of mind. He felt the weight of their expectations, the burden of their fear, the responsibility to protect and serve the community that had entrusted him with their safety. One evening, as he sat in his office, the lamplight casting long shadows across his desk, his mind weary from the relentless pursuit of the elusive burglar, a detail caught his attention, a detail that had been overlooked, a detail that sent a shiver down his spine, a cold wave of realization washing over him. The stolen items, the jewelry, the antique coins, the sentimental pocket watch, all held a connection to the victim's past, to their memories, to their loved ones. They were not just valuable possessions. They were irreplaceable treasures, imbued with sentimental value, with the echoes of lives lived, of loves lost, of memories cherished. The burglar, it seemed, was not just motivated by financial gain, but also by a desire to collect memories, to possess tangible reminders of the past, to hold on to something precious that had been lost. This realization sparked a connection in Sheriff Hayes's mind, a connection that he had been subconsciously avoiding, a connection that filled him with dread and disbelief. He remembered Emily's stories about her late husband, her cherished memories of their time together, her nightly visits to the bench where they had first met, her desperate attempts to hold on to the past, to keep his memory alive. He remembered the faded blue coat she always wore, the coat that had belonged to her husband, a tangible link to his presence, a reminder of the love they had shared. He couldn't ignore the connection any longer, the unsettling realization that the burglar, the person who had been preying on the town's elderly residents, the person who had stolen their precious memories, might be the very person he had been trying to help, the woman he had come to care for, the woman who had shared his grief and found solace in his company. The thought was like a punch to the gut, a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. He had opened his heart to Emily, had offered her his friendship, his support, his trust. He had seen in her a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the path of grief and healing. And now, this realization, this suspicion that she was the one responsible for the crimes that had shaken his community, threatened to shatter the fragile bond they had built. He couldn't dismiss the possibility, the evidence too compelling, the connection too strong to ignore. He had to confront her, to seek the truth, to understand the motivations behind her actions, to reconcile the woman he knew with the perpetrator he was hunting. He rushed to Emily's house, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He knocked on the door, his knuckles rapping against the wood with a sense of urgency and dread, his heart heavy with the weight of his suspicions. Emily opened the door, her face pale, her eyes filled with surprise and a flicker of fear, her usual calm demeanor replaced by a nervous apprehension. Sheriff Hayes, his face etched with a mixture of sadness and determination, stepped into her home, his gaze sweeping over the familiar surroundings, his eyes searching for confirmation of his suspicions. And then he saw it, a small wooden box tucked away on a bookshelf, a box that he recognized from the description given by one of the burglary victims, a box that held the stolen memories, the tangible evidence of Emily's betrayal. He reached for the box, his hand trembling, his heart sinking with each step closer to the truth. He opened the box, his breath catching in his throat as he saw the stolen items, the jewelry, the coins, the pocket watch, all neatly arranged inside. Their presence a silent accusation, a confirmation of his worst fears. Emily, her face pale, her eyes filled with shame and remorse, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and resignation, stood before him, her silence a confession, her tears a testament to her guilt. The truth, like a shard of glass, pierced through the fragile illusion of their connection. shattering the trust he had placed in her, the empathy he had felt for her, the love that had begun to blossom in his heart. He felt a wave of betrayal, a sense of loss that mirrored the grief he had felt for his father, the pain of a broken bond, the shattering of an illusion. He confronted Emily, his voice trembling with emotion, his heart aching with the realization that the woman he had come to care for, the woman he had sought solace in, was the one responsible for the crimes that had plagued his town. He spoke of the trust he had placed in her, the friendship they had shared, the community she had betrayed. Emily, her voice choked with emotion, her tears streaming down her face, confessed to the burglaries. She explained that she had been driven by desperation, her grief and financial struggles overwhelming her, her actions a desperate attempt to provide for herself and her young child. A child she had kept hidden from him, a child who was the spitting image of her late husband. She expressed her deep regret for the pain she had caused, her betrayal of the trust that Sheriff Hayes and the community had placed in her. She pleaded for forgiveness, her voice filled with remorse, her tears a testament to her regret, her desperation a reflection of the depths of her despair. Sheriff Hayes, his heart torn between his duty to uphold the law and his compassion for Emily's plight, found himself at a crossroads. He had to make a difficult decision, a decision that would impact not only Emily's life but also his own and the town he had sworn to protect. Sheriff Hayes, faced with the difficult task of reconciling his personal feelings with his professional duty, his heart torn between his compassion for Emily and his responsibility to uphold the law, decided to pursue a path of restorative justice, a path that prioritized healing and reconciliation over punishment and retribution. He recognized that Emily's actions, while harmful and illegal, stemmed from a place of deep pain and desperation. He understood that her grief, her financial struggles, and the lack of support she had received in the aftermath of her husband's death had driven her to a place of despair, a place where she had made choices that she now deeply regretted. He also recognized that simply arresting and punishing Emily would not address the root causes of her actions, that it would not heal the wounds she had inflicted on herself and the community. He believed that true justice lay not in retribution but in restoration, in helping Emily to take responsibility for her actions, to make amends, and to find a path towards healing and redemption. He worked with Emily to understand the root causes of her actions, her grief, her financial struggles, and the lack of support she had received in the aftermath of her husband's death. He listened to her story, her voice filled with remorse and regret, her tears a testament to her pain. He connected her with grief counseling services, recognizing that she needed professional help to navigate the complex emotions of loss and trauma. He helped her access financial assistance programs, ensuring that she had the resources to provide for herself and her child, to alleviate the desperation that had driven her to commit the burglaries. He also connected her with community support groups, creating a space for her to connect with others who had experienced similar losses, to share her grief, and to find solace in the understanding and compassion of others who had walked a similar path. He worked with the victims of the burglaries, facilitating a dialogue between them and Emily, creating a space for understanding, empathy, and forgiveness. He helped Emily to understand the impact of her actions on the victims, their sense of violation, their loss of trust, the emotional scars that her crimes had left on their lives. He also helped the victims to understand Emily's circumstances, her grief, her desperation, and her remorse. He helped them to see her not just as a perpetrator but as a human being who had made mistakes, a human being who was capable of change and redemption. He facilitated a process of restorative justice, where Emily took responsibility for her actions, apologized to the victims, and committed to making amends. The conflict resolution process was not without its challenges. Some victims struggled to forgive Emily, their anger and hurt outweighing their empathy. They had been violated, their sense of security shattered, their precious memories stolen. They demanded justice, punishment, retribution for the harm that had been inflicted upon them. Some community members questioned Sheriff Hayes' leniency, his decision to prioritize restorative justice over punishment. They argued that Emily's actions deserved to be punished, that she should be held, that leniency would only encourage others to break the law. But Sheriff Hayes, his belief in the power of redemption unwavering, his compassion for Emily, tempered by his commitment to justice, persisted in his efforts to guide the community towards healing and reconciliation. He organized community meetings, bringing together the victims, Emily, and other community members, creating a space for open dialogue, for sharing perspectives, for understanding the complexities of the situation. He facilitated dialogues, his calm demeanor and empathetic listening creating a safe space for the expression of emotions, for the acknowledgement of pain and hurt, for the exploration of forgiveness and reconciliation. He helped the victims to express their anger, their fear, their sense of betrayal, their need for justice. He helped Emily to express her remorse, her regret, her shame, her desire to make amends. He helped them to see each other as human beings, flawed and vulnerable, capable of both harm and healing. He also provided support and resources to both the victims and Emily. He connected the victims with counseling services, support groups, and financial assistance programs, helping them to cope with the emotional and material consequences of the burglaries. He helped Emily to find a job, secure stable housing, and access mental health services, providing her with the support she needed to rebuild her life and make amends for her actions. He worked with the town council to implement programs and initiatives to support widows and families of fallen soldiers, recognizing the need for greater community support and resources for those who had sacrificed so much for their country. He advocated for increased funding for grief counseling services, financial assistance programs, and support groups for military families. He also worked with the town council to create a community outreach program, connecting volunteers with elderly residents who needed assistance with errands, household chores, and companionship. He recognized that many elderly residents, especially those living alone, were vulnerable to isolation and loneliness, and he sought to create a community where everyone felt supported and connected. Emily, through therapy, community support, and her own determination, began to heal from her grief and rebuild her life. She found a new job as a librarian, her love of books and her passion for sharing stories finding a fulfilling outlet. She secured stable housing, creating a safe and nurturing home for herself and her young child. She also reconnected with her community, her initial isolation replaced by a sense of belonging and acceptance. She volunteered at the local Veterans Center, offering support and companionship to other families who had lost loved ones in service to their country. She shared her story, they rediscovered their sense of unity, their compassion for one another, and their belief in the possibility of redemption. They learned to see Emily not just as a perpetrator but as a human being who had made mistakes, a human being who was capable of change and growth. They offered her forgiveness, not condoning her actions but recognizing her remorse and her commitment to making amends. They welcomed her back into the community, offering her support and encouragement as she rebuilt her life. They rediscovered the strength of their community bonds, their shared experiences forging a deeper connection and a renewed appreciation for the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. The incident with Emily and the subsequent conflict resolution process marked a turning point in Sheriff Hayes' life, a catalyst for personal and professional growth, a shift in his perspective that would forever alter his approach to law enforcement and his role in the community. He had confronted the complexities of justice and compassion, the challenges of balancing his professional duty with his personal empathy. He had learned that true justice was not always about punishment and retribution, that sometimes the most effective way to address harm was through healing, reconciliation, and the restoration of broken bonds. He had discovered a new dimension to his role as a sheriff, a role that extended beyond law enforcement to encompass community building, support for the vulnerable, and the facilitation of healing and reconciliation. He saw his role as a protector not just of the law but also of the human spirit, a guardian of the community's well-being, a facilitator of growth and transformation. He became a more compassionate and understanding leader, his interactions with the community infused with a deeper empathy and a greater awareness of the human struggles behind every crime and conflict. He listened with his heart as well as his ears, seeking to understand the root causes of behavior, the underlying pain and desperation that often led to transgression. He saw his role as not just to enforce the law but also to help people find their way back to the community, to support them in their journey towards healing and redemption. He became a bridge builder, connecting people with resources, facilitating dialogues, and fostering a sense of unity and shared responsibility within the community. He also embraced a new direction in his personal life, his relationship with Emily transforming from one of support and friendship to one of love and commitment. He had learned to trust again, to open his heart to the possibility of love and intimacy, to embrace the vulnerability and joy of human connection. He had confronted his fears of repeating past mistakes, his insecurities about his ability to love and be loved, and had emerged stronger and more confident in his capacity for intimacy and commitment. He had learned to express his emotions, to communicate his needs, and to nurture a relationship based on mutual respect, understanding, and unconditional love. He and Emily, their bond forged in the fires of adversity, their connection deepened by their shared experiences and their mutual journey towards healing and redemption, found in each other a love that was both tender and resilient, a love that had blossomed amidst the challenges and emerged stronger and more beautiful. They built a life together, their home a haven of warmth and laughter, their love a testament to the transformative power of human connection. They shared their joys and sorrows, their hopes and dreams, their lives intertwined like the branches of a sturdy oak tree, their roots reaching deep into the fertile soil of their shared community. Sheriff Hayes' journey through the encounter with Emily, the revelation of her secret, and the subsequent conflict resolution process was a testament to his capacity for growth and transformation. He had confronted his own emotional detachment, his tendency towards routine and predictability, and embraced a more compassionate and empathetic approach to life and his role as a sheriff. He had learned the importance of looking beyond the surface, of understanding the human stories behind every action and every conflict. He had discovered the power of empathy, the transformative potential of forgiveness, and the importance of community in healing and reconciliation. Reflecting on his experience, Sheriff Hayes recognized the profound impact that Emily had had on his life. She had challenged his assumptions, opened his heart, and inspired him to become a better man, a better sheriff, and a better member of his community. He had learned to appreciate the complexities of human nature, the interplay between grief, desperation, and resilience. He had discovered the strength that comes from vulnerability, the healing power of forgiveness, and the transformative potential of human connection. He had also learned the importance of balancing his professional duty with his personal empathy, of upholding the law while also seeking justice that was tempered with compassion and understanding. He had come to appreciate the power of restorative justice, its ability to heal wounds, rebuild trust, and foster reconciliation within a community. He was grateful for the lessons he had learned, the growth he had experienced, and the relationships he had forged. He cherished his connection with Emily, their love a testament to the healing power of human connection and the transformative potential of forgiveness. He valued the trust and respect he had earned from his community, their shared experiences strengthening their bonds and their collective resilience. He had come to understand that his role as a sheriff was not just about enforcing the law but also about serving and protecting his community, about fostering a sense of safety, belonging, and shared responsibility. He had learned that true leadership lies not in power and authority but in compassion, empathy, and the willingness to connect with others on a human level. He had also learned the importance of self-reflection, of acknowledging his own biases and limitations, of continually striving to be a better version of himself. He had learned to embrace vulnerability, to express his emotions, and to seek support when needed. He had realized that true strength lies not in stoicism and self-reliance, but in the willingness to connect with others, to share our burdens, and to support each other through life's challenges. He had discovered that true fulfillment comes not from achieving personal goals, but from contributing to something larger than oneself, from making a positive impact on the world. He had found meaning and purpose in his role as a sheriff, not just as a law enforcement officer, but as a guardian of his community's well-being, a facilitator of healing and reconciliation, and a champion of justice and compassion. Sheriff Hayes' story is a testament to the transformative power of human connection and the importance of empathy and compassion in leadership and community building. It highlights the power of understanding, forgiveness, and restorative justice in healing wounds and fostering reconciliation. His journey reminds us that true strength lies not in power and authority, but in vulnerability and compassion. It encourages us to look beyond the surface, to connect with others on a deeper level, and to find fulfillment in serving our communities and making a positive impact on the world. Sheriff Hayes's story is an inspiration to us all, a reminder that we all have the capacity for growth and transformation, that even in the face of adversity and unexpected challenges, we can find strength, resilience, and hope in human connection and the pursuit of a more just and compassionate world. It is a story that challenges us to examine our own assumptions, to question our biases, and to embrace the complexities of human nature. It encourages us to see the world through the eyes of others, to understand their struggles, and to offer compassion and support, even in the face of wrongdoing. Sheriff Hayes's story reminds us that true justice is not always about punishment and retribution, but about healing, reconciliation, and the restoration of broken bonds. It highlights the power of restorative justice to bring together victims and perpetrators, to foster understanding and empathy, and to create a path towards redemption and healing for all involved. It is a story that celebrates the strength and resilience of the human spirit, the ability to overcome adversity, to learn from our mistakes, and to emerge stronger and more compassionate. It reminds us that even in the face of loss and grief, we can find hope, healing, and a renewed sense of purpose in our connections with others and our contributions to our communities. Sheriff Hayes's journey is an invitation to embrace our shared humanity, to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings, and to find meaning and purpose in our lives beyond our individual pursuits. It is a story that reminds us that we are all connected, that we all have the potential to make a difference, and that together, we can create a better world for ourselves and for generations to come. It is a story that challenges us to be more than just bystanders in the face of suffering and injustice, to reach out to those in need, to offer support and compassion, and to work towards a world where everyone feels safe, valued, and connected. Sheriff Hayes's story is a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we can find light in human connection, in the shared experiences that bind us together, and in the unwavering belief in the possibility of a better future. It is a story that inspires us to embrace our capacity for empathy, compassion, and forgiveness, to be agents of change in our communities, and to build a world where justice and love prevail.